time period. Anyway, moving on. So what else we need to talk about in financing the corporation is what it means to be a shareholder as an owner of the corporation. All right. What difference does it make? You know, shareholders, again, and if any of you out there do own stock, you probably own stock not because you're passionate about the company and want to play a role in its management and in defining its future. And you probably have never met any of the directors of the company that you're a shareholder for. You bought shares in that company because you bet that those shares are going to be more valuable when you sell them than what they were when you bought them. You bought shares because you're investing in them, or because you think they're going to net you a profit in dividends before you sell them. Other way, you did it not because of some interest in corporation and corporate management, but because you're trying to make money. So primarily being a shareholder for most of us means that we're investors, and we don't really care who the elected directors are. But again, they play a role in deciding, the directors play a role in deciding how profitable your shares are. What do you get when you buy shares of stock? Well, first of all, you get rights. You have the right to vote at the annual meeting. And again, for the most part, we're talking about electing directors, right? That's the most important function that shareholders have, right? They vote for directors and fundamental corporate changes. We've already talked about that. So you know that that's, part of what they do. Second thing that shareholders have the right to is a right to receive a dividend. A dividend is a share of the company's profits, or surplus of profits. When the company earns a profit, it can do one of two things with that. Right? Number one, it can decide that there's some place that those profits need to go to support the company for its future. Some type of investment, paying down additional debt, whatever. But when there's a surplus of profits, the directors, in their infinite wisdom, can vote to declare a dividend. And what a dividend is a share of profits divided evenly among shareholders. So, we're going to talk about different types of stock, and we're going to change this scenario, but at the most basic level, what we're talking about is an equal share of profit per shareholder, or per share, I should say, not per shareholder, because a shareholder who owns one share versus somebody who owns 1 million shares are not going to get the same amount of money when a company declares a dividend. So, usually dividends per share are pretty small. I've seen 5 cents a share, and that's for a company that's declared, $1 million surplus profit for the year. So it's not a huge amount of money. I think the most I've ever personally received was something like 37 cents a share, and boy, I was pretty pumped with that. So this is a big deal for shareholders. This is something you want to see. Not only does it put a little bit of extra money in your pocket, 37 cents a share, but it means that the company is profitable, the company is doing well, and that your investment is a good one, because you're dealing with a company that's growing, that's earning a profit. So as shareholders, we like dividends, and if you are a shareholder, you have a right to receive a dividend. But we'll get to that in a second too, the different types of shareholders. So directors declare that dividend. So again, the dynamic here is, as a shareholder, you're going to vote for directors who you think are going to declare dividends and give out some of that money rather than sitting on it. This creates a conflict, sort of, for directors, because you want to do what's in the best you must do what's in the best interests of the corporation, but at the same time, if you want to be reelected as a director, you better make the shareholders happy. And what makes the shareholders happy is the price of their stock going up and when dividends get paid. So, the third right you have as a shareholder is to get a share of the assets or profits remaining when the corporation gets dissolved. We'll talk about obviously when we get to it, in our 5-part analysis of each of these business forms, we'll get to dissolution, termination of a corporation. But what we're going to say for now is that, like a lot of the other business forms we've talked about, when a corporation decides to dissolve and the shareholders vote in favor of that, the company is going to liquidate its assets. And when there is profit remaining following liquidation and following paying off all the debtors, all the creditors of the corporation, there's a profit left over. That profit doesn't just, go to limbo. It gets divided among the shareholders, and that's your right as a shareholder. So again, as a shareholder, this means that you probably don't want your company to dissolve and wrap up, but you also, if you're going to dissolve a company, you want to do it as a shareholder at a time when there's going to be some profit, so at the end of it, you at least put some money in your pocket. Because the shares of a dissolved company aren't worth very much. So, if a company's going to dissolve, and you're a shareholder, riding it out until the end because you'd rather not dissolve the corporation is a bad idea. You'd rather dissolve it, you'd rather vote for dissolution when there's still some profitability left in it. So that at the very least, when your shares go to zero because the company's been completely dissolved, at least there's some liquidated asset value left for you to cling to as a return on your investment. Okay. So the next part of this detour into how corporations are financed is looking at different types of stock. All shareholders are not created equal, all right? And I mean that a couple different ways. First of all, like I said, it's not like voting in a presidential election where it's one person gets one vote. In a corporation, shares are the key, not individuals. So if you happen to own 1 million shares and I own 1 share, you're very naturally going to own a lot higher percentage of the corporation than me, and you're going to be a lot more powerful than me when it comes to election of directors and officers and all the other things that we vote on. You're also going to get a larger share of dividends when they get declared. So there is a big difference. Just because you're a shareholder does not mean you're anywhere near in power what another shareholder might be, because somebody might own a lot more shares than you do. Furthermore, I also mean that all shareholders are not created equal because there are different types of stock. All right? There's different kinds, and some are more powerful than others. Right? The most powerful types of stock is called preferred shares or preferred stock. Preferred stock comes with it some right above and beyond all the other shareholders. Right, so you issue a class of stock with some preferred right to it. Usually this is having something to do with dividends. So here's how this works. You are a preferred shareholder with dividends, and what it's going to say is that anytime the corporation declares a dividend, you as a preferred shareholder are entitled to receive $1 per share of preferred stock before non-preferred shareholders see a penny. So, if you own 1 million shares of preferred stock and the company just declared $1 million dividend, you're going to get $1 million of that dividend before anybody else, any other non-preferred shareholder, sees a penny. So if you're in that situation and you're not a preferred shareholder, you may get all excited because your company declared a dividend, but you're not going to see a penny of it. This is a sweet deal if you're a preferred shareholder. You're guaranteed something, some type of return on your investment as soon as a dividend gets awarded. These shares of stock tend to be kind of rare in companies, you typically do not buy these when you buy and trade shares of stock on a stock market. It's a little bit rare, and they usually give them out to very particular special people within a corporation, but they are out there. Another thing you might get is this similar type of rights, a preferred share with a right in liquidation. You may buy a share of stock that says at liquidation you'll be entitled to some higher percentage of the remaining profits and surplus cash on hand after liquidation, because you own preferred shares before someone who owns non-preferred shares gets anything. There's also, there's another name for this, and I don't want to confuse you with it. I'm just going to throw it in here. There's also shares that come with them voting rights. So, for example, like I said, each share is going to vote usually one time. So if I own 500 shares, I get 500 votes towards what director I want to elect. Some shares will carry with them some additional voting rights. You get to vote each share twice or something. Now, again, a little more rare, and you don't see these bought and sold on traditional stock markets that often, but they are out there. Another type of stock, so we have preferred shares, where you have special rights, something above and beyond other shareholders, and then you have the not so special ones, and that's common stock. This is traditionally what you're buying and selling on the market. You don't get any kind of priority. And when it comes to profits to the company, especially at liquidation and dissolution, not only are you going to stand behind a preferred shareholder who has rights at liquidation, you're also going to stand behind all the creditors of the corporation and all that. So this is traditionally, what we think of when we think of stock. It's common stock. But I wanted you to know there's two different types of stock out there. Okay, thus ends our detour